I think for my gimmick, I'm just gonna like be on my phone the whole time.
I'm done. I'm out. I quit.
Yep.
Welcome to Three Play, where three friends play at podcasting about games, and we're just one short of having a good time.
Thank you for coming to today's podcast. We're going to be talking about games that make us feel. I'm Brean, or you can call me by my gamer tag, Eclecticlish, which is ridiculously difficult to say.
My name is Jordan. My Twitch handle is Buckeye734.
And I'm Billy, and you can call me Sunday School Billy or Billy. And it's really happy to be here. It is a little unsettling being on a video medium. I'm not used to that. I'm just used to the... and so is it actually a podcast? Or is it something else with the video medium?
I guess it's sort of a vodcast, but I mean, we're releasing it in multiple mediums. So
that's fair.
If you are only listening to this in audio, then it's a podcast. But if you're listening to the podcast, do know that you can go see our real faces while we say these words in our video cast on YouTube of the same name.
We are not held by basic definitions here.
We've transcended
the
single form of the podcast. So we are sort of an angelic chameleon of shows. Really, we could just call it a show. I think that actually sums it up pretty well with a bow.
Yep. We're changing the name of the show. It's now the Angelic Chameleon Show.
There you go. Conveys a clear message.
Yep. Everyone will know what that's about.
What with the Angelic Chameleon? What in the world? We have written poems.
We did.
We've each chosen a Super Nintendo game, correct? That's what I did.
Yeah. So the theme this time is Nintendo game, Super Nintendo game specifically. Mm-hmm. Did everyone write a limerick for him or?
No, I have a free verse poem.
Okay.
So mine is a more like emotional sort of like free verse. There's no rhyme.
Mine rhymes.
Mine is a limerick. So yes, it rhymes. Yep.
Great. Yeah.
But yeah, so then the game is we're going to read our poem and the other two people have to discuss and see if they can guess what game the poem is about.
You should be able to get mine, I think.
It's Metroid. Got it. All right, we can move on.
My childhood was filled with games, including this one. 3 bros, 2 controllers, had to share the fun. We'd play one game, time and time again. Pizza was a central theme, and you're often hanging 10. To someone unfamiliar, you may think this game's about art. And while some names may seem familiar, painting plays no part.
I know this one.
This game fits its era. You'll be moving to the right, shredding up some enemies who are looking for a fight. While the soundtrack is great, ice is nowhere to be seen. To beat a certain boss, you throw enemies at the screen.
Yeah.
If you've picked up on my clues, this game you surely know. Watch out for those spikes. My toe! My toe!
That was excellent. You
so
did
good.
Way better than I did on mine. Like mine is stupid now.
So, what game is it?
Turtles in Time?
Yeah, that is the game. Yep. Turtles in Time.
I still remember that moment of, I need to throw enemies like at the screen.
At Shredder, right? Yeah. Just sitting there like with his stupid claws.
Yeah.
It's so
like
good.
The play with perspective was really, really great.
Yeah. That was like it's like a moment for me, like in games, like where it's like, this is different than anything I've seen before, right?
It was like almost fourth wall breaking.
Literally.
Okay, I'm gonna go.
Okay.
Go for it.
There's no clever rhymes. I'll step up my rhyming game next time.
Okay.
I am not strong enough, but he is. I'm still determined, and after my first loss, he encourages me. I will fight in this unknown time, against this enemy that I can't see, I will stand up against violence, though it's not what I choose. I will stand up, endure your taunts, and when you fall, there will be nothing left. You will be forgotten. The only remnant will be using what I learned, your hate and violence against others like you, standing up to them stronger than before, standing up to all of them to end this cycle, standing up to save everyone and everything, becoming stronger than my crimson friend, becoming stronger because of them and their sacrifices. I will stop you, and I'll become 18 times stronger, 200 times stronger. No matter how many times you come back, I'll always say no, and I will always be there to stop you from burning down the world.
I have a guess.
I thought I knew mid
I was going
poem,
back
and
and
now,
forth between two.
now I have no idea. Well, I'll tell you what my guess was, like middle of the poem. It's
Yeah.
definitely wrong based on the ending, but I was going to say Super Punch Out,
No,
but
Don't think it's
definitely
Super
not Super Punch
Just
Out.
the stand up.
but
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
is clever. Yeah,
Mhm.
that would have been a good repetition for.
I think it's one of the Castlevanias.
Good guess.
My guess is Super Castlevania.
Yeah, it's a good guess. No, it is Mega Man X.
Dang it, that was my other guess.
Right. And
I
what's
should have
similar
known. I should have known.
in terms, right? So like the hints
Crimson
there
You
would
said
Friend.
your
yeah.
Crimson Friend.
Crimson
right?
Friend, so that's 0. Right, like using, what did I say? It got a little choppy in there. I didn't edit it. Using what I learned from your hate and violence against
Yep.
others like you, right? So you
Mhm.
steal their weapons.
Yeah.
Actually,
Mega Man was my other thought, and I couldn't.
a more
I-
esoteric
Sure.
hint was I will stop you and become 18 times stronger, 200 times stronger. So Sigma is the 18th letter of the Greek alphabet, and it
Oh.
actually stands for the number 200. So those are hints that no normal person would figure out.
Perfect. That's what
Yeah.
this is all about.
Exactly.
It's great. Oh, that was great. I love trying to figure these out. It's so fun.
Yeah, these are fun. Okay, so here's mine. It's just a limerick. It's not as long as either of yours. So I hope my clues that I built in here are good enough. A racing game played as a tyke, not a skateboard, scooter, or trike. Trick twists make you zip, pull off the Z flip. My sentient, speedy half bike. I can read it again if you want.
Sentient,
speedy half bike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, read it one more time.
A racing game played as a tyke, not a skateboard, scooter, or trike. Trick twists make you zip, pull off the Z flip. My sentient, speedy half bike.
I mean, I know it's not it. The only thing I can think of is the newspaper delivery game, but I know that's not it. I just keep coming back to.
I was thinking F-Zero, but I don't think that's bikes, right?
No, that's like
All right.
spaceships.
So now here's my only other guess would be like this is really going back into my '90s childhood here, but I'm gonna go with Biker Mice from Mars.
No. So there's this game for the Super Nintendo called Uniracers. Which
Uniracers.
Do you remember
Okay.
Uniracers?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I never played it, but you're on unicycles, I assume.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, you are a unicycle.
You are a unicycle.
Like, and the unicycles like emote with their like seats and stuff. It's incredible. I've never seen like sentient unicycles. But then you're doing all these
For good
tricks
reason,
and stuff.
I think.
Yeah, it was done super well. Like it was a really fun racing game. But
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
Uniracer. That's a game I haven't thought about in years.
mm-hmm. Today we're going to be talking about games that make us feel, have emotions of some sort, cry, be real sad, or maybe afraid, or maybe angry, whatever various emotions we want to talk about.
No, I'm sorry. I interpreted it. I don't pay attention a whole lot, and I just read it as cry, like sad, like that sort of like strong feel. I think I have, because I don't. Yeah, we'll get there. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, we can just
Do you
kind of
guys
start
have some
going through. Yeah,
Do you guys have some besides crying and sad?
I have one.
Okay.
I have one, maybe two as well that are
Okay.
different emotions besides crying. I think it with games, I found it the most interesting that they could make me cry or feel emotions like that. So that's why I think I'm kind of like, that one's the one I'm most interested in, is because it seems odd that this 8-bit game with characters that barely look like humans and just text on the screen can like bring tears to my eyes. So like that's just interesting to me.
Yeah, I think crying is the hardest emotion to evoke, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's when I think of games that make you feel something. I think the ones that are the most powerful in some way help tap into that sadness emotion as opposed to just because I mean, so many games try to be funny, right? And that can be so hit or miss, right? So I think when I think of games that make you feel something, right? I think the most powerful ones are the ones that make me sad.
I will, and I'll remind our listeners and or viewers of this, but I am a really big softie. Like, it doesn't take much to get the waterworks going for me. Like, you throw a Disney Pixar movie on, even like a short, I'm tearing up. But I have tried to like identify the most emotion, because it's not as common with games. Like, I will say I'm a bit more reserved, with a bit more stoic.
I have a heart of stone, so nothing touches my heart ever.
Yeah, sure.
So everything I say tonight, just know it was like I could imagine crying at this.
That's as close as it can get you.
Yeah.
You can like, oh yes, I understand why this would make someone cry, not me.
I probably fall into the softy side of things too. Definitely Pixar movies every time. Doesn't matter which one. Yep.
They've just got that formula down, and I know it, right? Like, I know what they're doing. I know they are like manipulating me emotionally, and not like manipulate in a bad way, but just I know they're like playing on those beats. Right? I can just like see the arc that they're laying out for me. And it just doesn't matter. Like, logic can't defeat that emotion in me.
No.
Well,
Jordan, do you want to tell us what your first game on your list of games that made you feel an emotion are?
Well, first I would like to point out that you shouldn't be crying at Bambi's mom dying for the 100th time, right? It's not sad anymore. It's happened 100 times.
I couldn't tell you like the narrative arc of Bambi. Like, I could not lay out the 5 points of plot on Bambi.
The hunter goes out, kills Bambi's mother, brings it back, makes venison stew.
Yeah.
Feeds it to their children.
Yeah.
And makes
this part.
Makes a poor family happy.
He doesn't feed it to the deer's children. He feeds it to his own children.
Yeah, to his own children. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a different Bambi.
So let's get to the games that made us feel. Binding of Isaac, that one made me feel lots of feels.
Really?
Yeah, but for not good reasons. I mean, like, it brought up all kinds of like,
it's unsettling.
And like feelings of religious trauma and so forth, which is tough. when you've like experienced some of that type of thing. We don't need to get deep into that, but
I got Binding of Isaac for free, and I remember when that game booted up, I was like, "Holy crap!" And that didn't stop. And like, I feel like for me, it was almost like I took the beginning and I was like, "I'm gonna put that in a box over here, ignore that, and now I'm gonna play this game." And like, that's pretty much how I approached that game. I just kind of ignored all that. Was like, "Hey, this game's fun. I'm going around shooting tears at." Poop.
Yeah. I'm playing Endless Legend of Zelda Dungeons.
Yeah.
That's kind of...
So is that...
In order to play it, I had to kind of put my mindset in there. That wasn't even on my list because, like, I didn't really want to talk about it. But but that definitely, like, was a game that made me feel...
Yeah, but that's... Do you think that's a game that made you feel because... the game, or was it just this like it happened to intersect with bad experiences you'd had in your life.
Well, that, and I can't believe that the person who wrote that, like, intro and some of that, they clearly understood religious trauma to a level that meant that they probably experienced it, and that's just not a good feeling. I don't like that other people have been affected in this way. So, yeah. This is gonna be a great episode, guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you're still listening, you are a glutton for punishment.
Yeah.
Let's get sadder. Let's get sadder.
So Jordan, what makes you sad?
What makes me sad? All right, so I'm just gonna put the one that I think emotionally affected me more than any game ever has, and that is The Last of Us. And I know that's gonna be on Billy's list as well. I'm not going to get into spoilers. I haven't played this game since becoming a dad, and I'm not sure if I could play this game again after becoming a dad. But I've
thought of that too. I've had that thought as well, like fatherhood affecting that. Not that you need that, right? Like, because we both played it prior, I think, even to being married.
And that's what I think this game does so well in making you feel, right? Neither, like, when Billy and I played this game, you're right, neither of us are married, neither of us have children, and so I'm like 22 years old, getting the world by the tail, put it in my little pocket. And so, right, there's not I wasn't drawing on my life experience when I played this game, right? But what the game does so well is it makes you attached to the characters that are in it. So much so that they weave their storytelling in a way that it intersects with the gameplay. So that it's not just these cutscenes that are really, like, phenomenally done, right, that make you attached to these characters, but they also give you, the players, the opportunity to express that attachment to the characters.
Well, so when you say, like, you interact with them, what mechanics are they using to do that? Is it, like, different for different scenes, or is it like conversational choices?
In this situation, the emotion that comes to my mind is like this emotion of, like, I need to protect this person, right? And that's your job. That's the character's job in the story, right? It's to protect this other individual. And they give you, the player, the chance to enact that, right? Other games have tried to do that, right? Resident Evil 4 immediately comes to mind with Ashley, right? And how annoying it is to chase after Ashley.
Like, I want to get rid of you as soon as possible.
Exactly.
When
good.
Do,
Ashley's
like, okay.
gone. Right.
All right. I can breathe.
But this is, there's very few instances of the other character getting in trouble, but when they make it happen, right? When they make that character, she's in trouble, right? You, the player, have the immediate opportunity to stop it from happening. And you, like, I cannot tell you how quickly I mashed the run button to sprint across the level and hit the, like, mashing the button to try and, hit this enemy, right? And it immediately transitions into this smooth cutscene where he just kicks the dude right across the face. And it was like, that was the moment in the game that I realized, like, I am emotionally attached, because I had, like, that game made me, the player, feel like I have to mash these buttons in order to get across this level and save this person, right? And so I think it's a testament to how well designed that game is, both cinematically as well as mechanically. Now, there are problems with The Last of Us, I think, as far as, like, gameplay repetitiveness. No, Billy disagrees.
Stop it.
Okay.
The bow is the coolest weapon in that game.
The bow is the coolest weapon. You're not wrong.
Two things. I think part of it is that you're right, because, like, Resident Evil 4, Ashley is, like, super helpless and more of something like, this is, like, dead weight, where, like, I have to, and, like, very weak. So it's like, man, like, I have to help you, because if I don't, then the game's, like, over really quickly, and it just doesn't quite work.
And then the president's daughter's dead, right?
And then what am I gonna? I'm gonna go to what country? Eastern European country do I have to hide out in after that? Excommunicated from the United States.
Yeah.
And I think so. Then the other thought was, Brean, you had mentioned is part of that emotional coupling created through like choice, like through dialogue choice or things like that. And I would say that like games that give you those choices, the one that comes to mind would be like Mass Effect.
Mm-hmm.
I think those have a lot harder time.
I agree.
Actually making me feel invested. And the best, because I think you can make an argument like, no, having character choice gives you more like agency in those relationships and emotions in terms of the narrative. But honestly, like the best comparison I can come up with is like, have you read a choose your own adventure book that is as good as just like a book that decides to tell you this story? I was like, well, no, because I'm going to end up like choosing the wrong thing and get eaten alive by ferrets or something like that in this ridiculous R.L. Stine choose your own adventure.
Now, I would normally agree with you, Billy,
Yeah.
but I'm actually playing this choose your own adventure right now. And let me pull it up because I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But it is ridiculously good. Like yeah, it's a choose your own adventure game.
That's great.
Legendary Kingdoms, The Valley of the Bones is what it's called.
Ooh.
I think you're right in most cases, Billy.
So you have one example.
I have a single example. So don't write them off.
But that's, yes, and I'm not writing them off. Choose your own adventures are very fun.
I understand what you're saying, though,
yes.
right? Because what you're saying is when you make a game with that many choices, right, and that many branching trees, you are forced to make your main character a blank slate, right? Commander Shepard is as boring gets until you inject some life into him, right?
Yeah.
And when you choose one of those not either really, really good or really, really bad options, right? Your dialogue is just like, all right, this is progressing the story, right?
Yeah.
And so I agree with what Billy's saying. Like, to me, I think it's a much, much easier time when you decide, like, to pull out emotion when you decide these are our characters and this is where they're going.
Yes,
and I think that's what The Last of Us does well. Is it has a narrative that it wants to explore, and you get to participate in that, and you get pulled in and invested to these characters. And
you get to participate until you don't.
Yeah, and it's great.
Well, and I do 100% agree. Like I think that oftentimes
really, Brean, because it sounds like you don't. It sounds like you want to play Legend of the Valley's Lost Bones, and
that was it exactly.
That was close enough.
Yep. Well, I mean, I really do want to play that, but I also completely agree that like the narrative can get very lost. I think the best storytelling in video games happens when the mechanics match the emotion. In order to like make you really feel it versus just tell you you're feeling it.
And video games have the unique opportunity to do that, right? No other medium has the opportunity to let you participate like that, right? And let you
mash a button really hard in order to get to where you're trying to go because
exactly,
urgently trying to get there.
Because that means something to me, right?
Yeah.
Like in a short amount of time, they've created something that this is not happening, right? And me as the player, I'm actively preventing that from happening. Bill, you look like you absolutely want to say something.
Oh, I'm trying to think, and I like maybe you guys can come up with this. I'm just trying to think of a bad example of like a narrative that just totally flops, or like, no, I don't connect to these characters. In fact, I hate these characters, and I just can't.
I can think of several characters that I hate.
By all means.
Well,
but I mean, are there several characters that you hate that you are not supposed to hate?
Well,
that's what I'm looking for. Like,
well, you just named one in the Resident Evil game. Like,
oh, that's fair. Yeah, actually,
Ashley. Right. Yeah, Ashley. Right. And that's an example of they added this game mechanic where Ashley's in trouble, save her, right? But it's so poorly implemented that you just hate her.
Yep.
Yeah, I will say we are like ragging on probably like one of my top 10 games, Resident Evil 4.
But the reason Resident Evil 4 is your top 10 game. It has nothing to do with narrative.
No, it doesn't have anything to do with narrative because the Resident Evil games have terrible stories. Like, there's not a good Resident Evil story, which makes me interested in the Netflix show because it's like, well, these show like this sucks. Like, there's no, it's a zombie outbreak. Like, who cares?
Right? If it were a robot outbreak,
then I'd be interested.
Okay, I'm gonna
Billy,
move us. I'm gonna move us on. So
what's
I'll
your
give you-
emotional game, Billy?
Yeah, I'm looking through this list, and there's just so many. Okay, I want to say one and not talk about it, and then I want to talk about a different one.
Okay.
So I want to say Shadow of Colossus.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it's
that's
just like,
also on my list.
If you haven't played that game, play that game.
Yep.
There was a remaster for PS4.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Or not even a remaster. Not even a remaster. Remake. Blue Point remade that game.
But they didn't necessarily do anything different,
No.
right? Like Blue Point is known for doing a good job remaking a game, and I didn't play the remake. I've only played the original. That's a game that I always kind of forget about, and it's just like, man, what a masterpiece! And where The Last of Us ties you to these characters through exposition and dialogue and cutscenes, this one ties you to it through the world and the enemies. Right? And it's basically just you explore, and it's a vacant world that's vast. And there are huge colossi, and you have to destroy them to try to save the person that you love. And it's right. I think it's blank enough that you fill in the blanks, and that's sort of like different video game storytelling, right?
Yep.
It is absolutely different.
So that's fantastic. I do want to talk a little bit more about Celeste because that is one that I think.
Well, can I say something about Shadow of Colossus 2 real quick?
Yes, absolutely.
So,
of course.
Zero spoilers.
Wait, there was
but...
a sequel? Shadow of Colossus 2?
Yes, yeah. No. I mean, technically, yes. I mean, there's a trilogy.
Yeah, but we're not. Yeah.
I mean, Ico was really good. Ico is another example where
Sure.
the you're protecting somebody, and it was actually done well. Whereas it sounds like in
what was
Resident
the third
Evil,
one?
Guardian something or other. I'm trying to remember.
You played that. I remember you playing that.
I did play that game.
The Last Guardian of Gahul, right?
I know, just The Last Guardian. And please don't bring up The Last Guardian because I'm trying to block that game from my memory.
Okay. That's sad because I really like both Ico and Shadow of the Colossus.
There's a reason that game was delayed for as long as it was, and that's because when they released it, it was still a pile of trash.
Okay.
That's heartbreaking.
That is. But the other thing I would say about Shadow of the Colossus is it's also a really good example of a game that uses its mechanics to build a relationship, like with your horse. Like
I was gonna say, the saddest, the sad. I mean, there's so much death in that game. There's spoilers. Sorry.
This is like almost a 20-year-old, 15-year-old game.
Yeah. If you haven't played Shadow of the Colossus yet, get out of here.
Yeah.
Go play it and then come back.
Yeah, I mean, the saddest death in the game, right?
Yeah.
It's hard because every single one of them is just gut wrenching, right? But then you lose your horse.
When does the horse die? I forget.
He does come
Near
back.
the end.
Like he comes back limping, but at the end.
That's right.
Because you
but
think
by that
he dies.
point it doesn't. But that point it doesn't.
But yeah, you're done. You're kind of done with him at that point. In mechanics wise, you can't bring him back until at the end of the game. But yeah, it's and there's like the only talking in that game is just from that
calling your horse.
Calling your horse and the god
with.
thing, whatever it is.
What?
you go back. You go back and you into like the temple, and the whatever god being thing talks to you and is like, "Oh, you need to go kill this thing or whatever." And it's kind of through that conversation, and then what happens when you kill a Colossus, it just becomes very clear that what you're doing is not right, and and then the only other words are just yelling Argo. And then the horse comes running, and it's like that if that mechanic wasn't just right, if it wasn't like really responsive and the horse's AI didn't work like well, It would just be annoying, right? But they nailed it, and it made the
Mhm.
horse so valuable and so like you loved it because you could do all these cool things with the horse,
Mhm.
and then suddenly the horse dies and you're just like, no. Yeah.
And I will say, I think it's okay for people who have never played it to play the remake first.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to go back to the original.
No.
It's not like you're missing anything, because I do think modern, like looking at it through a modern lens, you would say like, oh, some of the controls are a little like frustrating compared to sort of like modern
Yeah.
titles. But if that's your only way to play it, like play it and deal with that frustration. Like, that's okay. Fantastic.
Celeste.
Anyway, go to your
Celeste.
next. Go to Celeste.
Man, Celeste. Funny little side story. Not funny, because Celeste is a pretty sad game. And
Is it?
I think in a good way. I mean, I think it's a game about like dealing with trauma, and like dealing with yourself. And so I think it ends ultimately, spoilers. Okay, spoilers. I think it ends ultimately well, but I do think it's like the struggle of like your own personal trauma or your own personal like self struggles.
So to
and
me,
s-
my
yeah,
like impression of Celeste
yeah,
is that that's a very uplifting game,
yeah,
especially if you are someone who, you know, deals with like the large amount of anxiety that
sure,
the character in that game clearly deals with, right?
yeah. I think why this one like always comes to mind, and not that I necessarily cried, but just felt a strong emotional connection to it. I actually got to meet his name's John Tatey. He used to write this fantastic football article called Block and Tackle, and he currently has a website called the Ological Society, where he actually still writes about football, and he's hilarious and fantastic. He does a podcast with his mom called Pop Mom, where he and his mom talk about pop culture stuff. But I actually got to meet him. He was doing a talk, and me and some friends ended up giving him a ride to like his hotel from the talk. And I asked him, I said like, hey, I noticed that like Celeste is your Twitter banner right now. Is there any reason that game? And he's like, oh yeah, I actually was playing through that during like what was kind of a tougher time in life, and it really like helped me out, really helped me
Yeah.
like process that. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like that's awesome to just like meet a person and then have this hear their own like personal connection to it. So John Tate, I hope it's okay that I share that story. I'm sure you'll be listening to this. But your perspective on Celeste helping you through a tough time, I think helped my connection with that game as well.
Now I've not played through Celeste, so like I've seen gameplay of it, but never seen any part of the narrative portion. How does is it like cutscenes between levels, or how does that work?
Yeah,
Okay.
you bump into other characters and you chat with them and hear kind of like about their life. And your character, Celeste, is very really reserved, very uncertain, right? Trying to climb this mountain, literally and metaphorically. And you bump into all these different characters who are like dealing with their own problems or encouraging you, and that's how you meet them time and time again as you climb up this mountain trying to get to the top, even though you're sort of like doubting yourself and dealing with people from your past who have doubted you. So yeah, I think you're right, Jordan. It is an empowering game.
Yeah, it's super empowering. And I think it even, like you mentioned, like this helps people deal like with tough times, right? And I think there were times shortly after that game where
Mhm.
I got into like really intense like anxiety like inducing situations, and I thought, okay, I'm just gonna imagine I'm making that feather
Yeah,
float and drop
yeah.
for a minute, you know what I
Trying to
mean? Just to
hold it in the
calm
middle,
myself
right?
down. Yeah. And I just think like something like that is uh like the game is teaching people like, hey, here's a way to deal with your anxiety, right?
Mhm.
And it's such a, to me that game is so uplifting and empowering. I think it's a solid choice for games that make you feel.
Okay, so for my games, I'll start with a couple happy ones, and then we'll get to the really really heavy one. But Chrono Trigger, I think, is probably one of the best games. Has
Really?
amazing writing.
Yeah.
Yes, like super super good writing,
Yeah.
super super likable characters. Too many great moments in that game to talk about on this, but one in particular, one of the main characters, you
Spoiler
kind
alert.
of, yeah, definitely spoiler alert here. Frog in this game is a warrior. He got transformed into a frog human by a mage, and he had a friend named Cyrus who the mage killed. At the same time, he got turned into a frog. He kind of inherited Cyrus's hero medallion and doesn't think he's worthy of it. And you go through this whole arc where he's like trying to reassemble the Mazamoon, which is what the sword that Cyrus was going after. And like he still the whole time doesn't feel he's worthy. And Maza and Moon, who are like these two like kind of entities that form the sword, test him, and like he comes out on the other side of it like worthy according to them, but still kind of is like tentatively not feeling it. And there's a bunch of stuff that happens in between all this stuff. But then you go to confront this mage, and you get to the edge of this like this wall this sheer cliffside with the castle on the other side of it. And there's a moment where he's just like, you go back through his whole history and his story that you hadn't really heard up until that point, and you see like the pain and suffering and the how much of a hero he really is, like in a true sense, not just in like the I'm gonna go out and beat stuff up ways. And then he like pulls out his sword, and like in the name of like Cyrus and his friends and everything he's learned, he just, this music starts playing, and half of that game is like amazing music, and like pulls out this sword, this music starts playing, he swings the sword down and slices this cliff face in two, and like opens up the pathway to go fight the mage. And you just feel like, yes, like this great triumph of Frog like learning to use the Mazamoon, and then finally like accepting that maybe he is a hero in some ways, and what it means to be a true hero. And it's just amazing moment. Second one that I really feel a lot in is Final Fantasy IX. Final Fantasy IX is my favorite of the Final Fantasies. Yes. I know it's not a usual one, but the reason is Veve. Veve in the game.
Wait. I've always pronounced it Vivi.
Well, I think I've heard it both ways.
Okay. I just want everyone to know that I'm in Camp Vivi over here.
We also growing up we also said
it's Vivi.
Yeah.
I'll
find out what the community says.
Okay. We all growing up though, we also mispronounced chocobo. We always called them chocobos. So don't trust me for any pronunciation.
Yeah, everyone out there, we will correct this.
Yes. Anyway, Veve, he basically is like a kid that's learning to understand death and mortality and like life and what it means to be alive and what death is, and just his arc of this existential understanding of what it means to live. I found extremely compelling and really, really good and sad, and like made me contemplate my own mortality. And like it was just I hadn't had another game that like made me think that deeply about philosophy before, so that was I think why that one hit me so bad.
I recently replayed 9 not too long ago, and it's definitely not my favorite in the series, but I think you would be hard pressed to find anyone who dislikes Vivi.
Yeah, that whole arc is great. And I do like how it connects to the main. How do I pronounce it?
Yeah.
Veve.
I don't think anybody in the world pronounces it like that from what I've seen.
Great. I am a unique snowflake.
Yes, absolutely. There's a poll that has the options as Vivi or Vivi.
Vivi, I think I've heard before.
Vivi's just terrible.
Like Vivian.
And I will say, of the two choices, 80% of people that voted chose Vivi, and only just under 20% chose.
Okay. I'm fine with Vivi,
but nobody that your pronunciation was not even an option on this poll from 2 years ago on a Final Fantasy board forum.
Clearly,
so I'm just reputable the messenger. I'm just the messenger.
Well, that leads me to my last one, which the game is called That Dragon Cancer. Uh, it's a real downer, I'll tell you. But also, if you've not ever been through the experience of having someone suffer with a illness to their death, like this gives you a real good window into that, particularly the death of a child. Like, so I'll describe one moment that just like I after this moment happened, I had to stand up and walk away from my computer because it 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 just was emotionally painful. So the basic premise of the game, well, not even the premise of the game, but like literally this guy's life. He and his wife in real life like had a child, and that child died of cancer, and then he was a programmer, and he programmed a game to help people like understand what that's like, and to kind of as a way to also reach out to other families that have lost children to cancer. And so there's you're doing all these things to kind of live through the experience of like, you know, as they found out about the child having cancer, as the child was in the hospital, after the child's death. So after the child's death, there's a moment where you're in the hospital room, and in the hospital room there's all these sympathy cards all over, and there's like, you know, 20 sympathy cards in this room, and you can go up to them and read them, and each one has a message from a person who has lost a child, either to cancer or to something else, but it's an actual person's message. And so I read through all 20 of them that were in the room, and it's gut wrenching to hear all these like stories and the love that they're kind of giving to each other going through this similar experience. And then you turn and you go and to walk out the door, and you walk into this hospital hallway with like glass walls along it, and strung on all the way down the entire hospital hallway are strings with sympathy cards hanging. And then out in the yard, you can see in the hospital yard out to this window, strings and strings and strings with cards all over them. Thousands and thousands of cards. And just that moment of reading all these in-depth stories about people's children's dying to cancer or other traumatic things, and then walking out and seeing thousands more stories like that was just, it's so hard to like wrap your mind around that amount of like suffering and pain in the world, and just to like kind of see that just made my heart like,
well, because that's I mean, what we've talked about up to this point, right, has all been like in-game fictional character emotion, right? That is a game connecting you to, hey, this is something that's real life happening, right? These are real people, not fictional ones, right?
No, and I think in that what they really did from like a gameplay standpoint is they got you to understand the individual pieces of it, like you reading each of those individual stories, so you understood that each of these cards represented this thing. And so you had like, they made that connection before you then walked out into this area where you saw an overwhelming number of them, and then it kind of hits you that like, it's not just 20, it's an overwhelming number of people in the world that deal with this.
They get you connected to the personal and then show you, right? Because if they just showed you the overwhelming numbers, that wouldn't,
right?
Yeah, then it's just kind of like, oh, whatever. But yeah, by taking that step of introducing you to it and then presenting it in that way, it was extremely powerful. So that's I do highly recommend that game, but it is also really, really hard to play.
Yeah. Does the game no, I don't think I could either, especially now having children. Do you think, does the game end with any donation suggestions, anything like that, as far as what you should do?
Yeah, you can actually get on their website too and see it.
Yeah, so they do, and they also, I think, have like help groups and stuff you can get a part of, and it also, part of the journey that it takes you through is some of the coping after the death. I mean, I use coping in air quotes because like it shows the real kind of journey. Like some of the coping is anger, and some of the coping is like just like being unhealthy in some way. Like clearly this is not a great way to cope, but when you go through something like that, you're doing whatever you can to survive. Like and I really like how real they were about the situation, and it's not some kind of candy coated view of it, because it gave me a real chance to understand it then, versus kind of just a distant kind of surface level understanding. I can now be more sympathetic to that. Not that I wouldn't be sympathetic before, but like to a greater degree, I can empathize better,
sure,
to those who are suffering in that way. So there's that one. So yeah, but so I do recommend it, but I also would say huge caution to it will be emotionally taxing if you do play it.
Yeah, it's not gonna be a fun time.
No.
Happy game.
No. There's a couple of fun moments because they do kind of like, they talk about like still having a good time with their child even in the midst of the sickness.
Right.
Yeah. And that's good to hear.
Yeah.
But,
well, let's bring the mood back up a little bit. Let's go around, and any other like honorable mentions, any little things you want to mention from different games?
So I had a couple other games that I was thinking about. One that I think is fantastic is the game Journey, which it's short. It's maybe an hour or too long, but it's just an allegory for life and your progress through life. And like the first time I played it, I didn't know it was multiplayer, and I just ran into some of these other things that looked like me, looked like my character, and you can't talk in the game. You can just make sounds at each other. And I didn't realize that was another player until about halfway through the game. And you go through this game, and I don't want to get into it too much just because it's an experience that I can't really describe or capture in words very well. But it is very, very cool as far as, I got to spend time with these people who I didn't even know, right? And then at the end, you go through it, and that was your journey. It's really, really great. I really, really recommend it. And then the other one that I had written down was the Stanley Parable. And the Stanley Parable had so many moments of just straight sheer laughter, and then straight sheer just like, I am so sad about that. The one that particular comes to mind is the one where you find the staircase. Right, you go into the room where the narrator's like, Stanley, just stay here, and he's showing you like this light show, and he's like, we can just stay here forever. And then you go down, like you kind of have to die to reset the game. And the only way to do it is to throw yourself off a staircase like 20 times. and the entire time you're doing it, the narrator's like, Stanley, is it really so bad here with me? Like, it's just like this torture of like, and you have to take enough fall damage to reset the game.
That's funny.
And it's just this unbelievable moment of like, I feel so bad about this. So the Stanley Parable, I think, definitely made me feel the gambit of emotions. So that's definitely one that's in there too.
That's fantastic. I'd kind of forgotten about that game. I'm trying to get the achievement of don't play the Stanley Parable for 5 years.
Yeah, I'm working on that too.
Yeah. So, but now I want to go back and play it. So you're weakening my resolve.
Sorry.
Quick honorable mentions for me. God of War hits a lot of those similar beats, and I mean the most recent one, not the older like PS2 Rage Fests ones. The most recent one hits a lot of the similar beats to The Last of Us in terms of like connecting with characters, and hits a lot of that familial stuff in terms of like, like being a father. And but honestly, I think it's more of the relationship between two other characters that are like not my characters in the game that like really pluck some of those heartstrings. And I won't go too much in it. We'll avoid spoilers for that. A Way Out. And Jordan, we played A Way Out together. You are
We
two
did.
characters trying to escape prison, and I will avoid spoilers for that. But it's a fairly serious game, and there's like it's really what it is you're sort of like working through these like chapters, and there's a bunch of like mini games your characters can do together as you work through those chapters. And the scene that I think of is when we were in the mountains and we like just escaped prison. Very stressful, like literally running from dogs in the mountains, and we end up in this like pool of water, and you can splash the water, but you splash it, you like kneel down a little bit and you go with your hands like no human would splash like that in any situation. And that's the hardest I've laughed at a video game is that moment.
That moment is on my Twitch channel, which you can see right down here. So if you're curious, you're listening, curious to watch us lose our minds, you can find that highlight.
I was watching, and it was absolutely the funniest thing I'd ever seen.
It was so preposterous. It was just ridiculous.
It just reminded me of two little children splashing each other in a kiddie pool is what it looked like.
And it doesn't interrupt their dialogue, so they're having this like really serious dialogue about like how they just escaped prison and like what they need to do now. It's amazing. Ori and the Blind Forest, it's fantastic. Play it. Undertale.
Undertale's a good one.
Firewatch. It's a really good narrative story. Yeah. Also a sad and a hard one. Sort of like running away from your problems and then kind of facing them or working through them. Brothers, Tale of Two Sons, which Jordan summed up as bros before hoes.
That is how I summed it up.
That was your summary?
That is how I summed up that game.
And we'll end with that one. I think that's a good one to end on.
If you take nothing away, keep that in mind. That's the moral of the story.
It is more than that. I think it is much more than that, but that is a good one-line summary of maybe a lesson learned in that game.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, Brothers was also done by the same guy who did A Way Out.
I believe so, yeah. And I haven't played the newest one of theirs.
Yeah, I've not played
it. It Takes Two, but that's supposed to be pretty good as well.
Oh, I've seen some gameplay of It Takes Two, and it looks very good.
Yeah.
Honorable mentions for me, Secret of Mana. I had to walk away at the last boss. I won't spoil anything, but I refused to fight the last boss because I was so mad.
Because
and I didn't beat it for a very long time. Eventually I went back and played it and beat it, but I was very mad at the last boss, so I didn't beat the game. Max Payne, which
Payne.
Yeah, which it's like if Matrix and a noir film had a baby. Lots of like crazy fights and bullet time and all this stuff, but really, really gritty, gritty storyline.
I'm curious, what did that game make you feel?
Sad and angry. Like, again, apparently all my games are about child death because like Max Payne, like again, his child and wife were killed, and and there's the one scene that keeps coming up in his mind and he's like being tortured by is like him walking into the nursery and finding his child dead, and like so there's that one. Nier, which I will say nothing about other than
I'm in the middle of
play it. Yep. So
kind of me too. I need to get back to it. Yeah,
no spoilers, but by far Nier is the best game I have played in probably a decade.
This is Nier Automata, right? Because there's aren't there other Niers?
There's like one of the mobile games got remade into a PC game, I think, and then and it's actually technically a spin-off from a whole other series. But it's a spin-off from a joke ending from another series. So it technically, like, it's kind of canon, but not really. Anyway.
Good to know.
Yeah, that's fun.
So, and then Spiritfarer, which I have not played all the way through, but I've played enough to know that it's going to make me cry multiple times. And yep. Yeah, that's I think. Oh, and then two more honorable mentions. So, sorry, Gauntlet, the original Gauntlet on NES.
Gauntlet?
Yeah. So the reason I put this on my list is if we're including all feelings, I was always so mad when I played that game because my older sister and I would play, and she'd be like off and running like off of the screen, and I'd be stuck somewhere in a corner, and I'd be screaming like, "Come back! I can't get out! Come back!" And like we'd just be yelling at each other because we kept like getting each other stuck because we didn't know how to like work together well. So Gauntlet, and then and then the game that has made me the most afraid ever is Dreadhalls in VR.
Dreadhalls was actually on my list in terms of like a fear, but I think that's more an attribute of virtual reality than Dreadhalls itself. Right? Like it's that you are in virtual reality. Like there are like Dreadhalls does not do anything particularly well. It's I think just you feel like you are in this horrifying labyrinth with monsters because of VR.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh gosh.
Yeah.
So scary. So I don't know if either of you are playing games right now, or what you are playing that's new or fresh or exciting.
I mean, mine's not super interesting. The game I've been playing most recently is called Generation Zero. The plot is kind of like meh. The gameplay is like pretty generic, but it's like a zombie apocalypse game, but instead of zombies, it's giant robots. And
thanks for watching and or listening. If you want to talk with us, feel free to leave a comment, or you can tweet at us at FreePlayCast. As a brand new podcast with mostly new podcasters, 2/3 of us appreciate feedback. We will, regardless, talk to you next week.